care of shame. And here's what we've noticed that in motion with shame. Shame has to do with our identity. Okay? And Satan's a liar. Matter of fact, he's the father of lies, and his native language is lying. So you can bet his number one tool against you is going to be done through lies. Here's what we notice at InMotion. People come to InMotion with all sorts of issues going on. And what we've found is that they bought into some of the most insidious lies that you could ever believe in. And they believe it. So we asked people about the lies they believe. We had a guy, he's an engineer, great brother. He's been a Christian like 25 years, way smarter than I am. And he's an engineer. And he raised his hand once at InMotion. He goes, Tim, I just want to say this. He said, I've always believed that there's an ought-to room in heaven. I'm like, what? He said, there's an ought-to room. I said, well, what's an ought-to room? He said, when you go to heaven, you're going to go into a room that's called the room that God's going to tell you what you ought to have done in your life.
Wow.
He was convinced, and he patterned his life for years in the church after that thought. And he goes, I don't know where I got it from. So I asked him, where'd you get that from? My guess is from his dad, somehow. Can you imagine how that changes the way you live your life? When you're always thinking, when I go to heaven, one of my first duties is going to be go to the ought-to room. Here's another one we hear is, once an addict, always an addict. Ever heard that one?
Yes.
That's a big fat lie from Satan.
Yes.
Big, big, big fat lie from Satan. We hear it all the time. We have a lot of people come in from all sorts of AA-style groups and things like that. Once an addict, always an addict. What's that say to you? If you never recover.
Never be free.
Yep.
Well, to me, it lessens the cross then.
Because?
Well, because it means that Jesus can't heal that. He
Right.
can heal everything else, but he can't heal that.
Yep. Yep, exactly. So that's who you are now. Hi, my name's Tim, and I'm a addict. We had a sister stand up.
That ends up defining us too.
It is.
Yep.
Defines us to other people,
Yeah.
and worse than that, it defines us right here in our own gut.
Yeah.
We start thinking, this is who I am. I identify myself by what I do.
Yep.
We had a woman stand up at a Women's Day, and her husband is a great brother. He had some serious sexual issues. He went to, he was kind of leading and doing some great things in our purity group for a while, doing really well. And she stands up at Women's Day trying to share good news, and she mentioned her husband, the sex addict.
Oh, dang.
That's what I did when I heard it.
Right?
In front of all the women in the church. And I don't think she meant wrong. It's her way she perceived people with issues. Poor guy. You imagine walking through the fellowship after that, right? So Satan gets after us with our identity. And I just want to finish out here, because there's lies all over the place. But what does God say about our identity? What are the words he
Pure,
uses?
blameless, perfect, we look like Christ in him.
Wait. Pure, blameless, perfect. We actually look like Christ.
Clothed in Christ.
Yeah. You look like Jesus. Little Jesus.
You look like Jesus. What else? You're what?
A new creation.
A new creation. And what happened to the old? It's gone.
Transformed.
We're transformed. What's John say in 1 John, or 1st or 2nd John? He goes, hey, you guys are children of God. And then what's he say? He says, that's what you are. That's it. He's getting ready for people to say, no, we're not. He goes, but that is what you are.
Yeah.
What else does he call us? The Bible. What other things?
Righteous.
We're chosen, we're righteous,
Holy.
holy,
Priesthood.
salt of the earth,
Citizens of
dearly
heaven.
loved, citizens of heaven. It's all over the place. So here's what we tell people at InMotion when we do this lesson. And I'm going to close out with this right now. We say you guys have a choice. Your identity is not dependent on where you are in your sin right now. Because we have people come in and they've been in some sin, right? They're feeling pretty bad. And this isn't just like positive talk, okay? I tell them these words that you all just said, these aren't just like things you see in a Christian bookstore. Like, oh, little plaques and stuff. That's not what this is. I said, you have a choice. You can either buy it right now, you can buy what God says about you, no matter what's going on in your life, just buy it. Or you can go ahead and choose it to do things that you want. But here's what we notice. For people that will buy it, it's a cycle. It's a synergetic cycle, is what we call it. If you buy more and more what God says about you, and you stick it in your gut, and you memorize it, you put it in your heart, it makes it harder to sin. I've noticed that about my own life.
Yeah.
The more I stick that stuff in my brain, and the more I, like, in some good days, like, wow, God, you really like me, don't you? You just love me, you like me.
Right?
But the more I stick that in, it makes it harder to sin. And then the more difficult it is to sin, the more you buy into that. Because you're like, wow. I mean, years ago, I got this great freedom going. I'm walking around like, I feel like a young Christian again.
Right?
I've been a Christian 30 plus years. I'm walking around, people like, hey, can I tell you what God did for me? I'm like this really goofy little guy. Hey, let me tell you my God, He is amazing. And I'm talking to people like I just been baptized. And the more you're like that, then the more you start thinking, yeah, it's really true. I am a child of God. But the key is you've got to buy it at the worst time of your life. You've got to buy it when you don't feel like buying it. That's what we tell people with this innocence. Buy it when you don't feel like it. All right? So that's a devotional that we do. I want to break for just a few minutes and get up, stretch out. And as you do, if you can have some conversation, just share one thing you learned today, one little piece that maybe made a difference for you. And we'll come back in about 5 or so minutes. Okay?